we can be a coffee bean in any environment we're in. And I think that my life is an example of that because I've proven on the outside exactly the way I live on the inside of prison. I live today the same way I lived inside of a maximum security prison because the rules apply all the time. And Shrikant, there's a lot of different ways to go to prison. Physical prison is just one prison. I tell people this all the time, and it's almost a warning that I meet more people out here in the free world that are locked up than I ever did when I was in prison, because more people are in prison by their thoughts and by their things than by steel bars and barbed wire and concrete. We become prisoners in our minds a lot faster than we become physical prisoners in life.
Hey listeners, welcome back. Joining me today from Texas is a college professor, inspirational keynote speaker, and a best-selling author of 2 books. He wants to be called himself as a change agent. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Damon West to inspire someone today. Damon, welcome to Inspire Someone today.
Shrikant, thank you so much for having me on your show today. This is great. This is my first time ever to be broadcast in India. So thank you very much for having me into your homeland to share my message today. This is the first time I get to penetrate a new country. It's fantastic. I'm excited.
This is a classic story of East meeting the West.
Absolutely. They've been doing this for centuries. Now we're doing it too.
Great. Damon, where are you joining us today? And for the benefit of our listeners, tell us a bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so I'm joining you from Texas, USA today. I live outside of the city of Houston in Texas. And Texas is a very big state, but you're from a very big country, so size doesn't matter. But yeah, so I've got this story. My story is about, it's a warning. It's also a message of hope. And the warning comes in with about the dangers of drugs, the consequences of bad decisions, because I made some really poor choices in my life that put me into a very bad situation because of my own doing. And a lot of times in life, we find ourselves in bad situations because of things we do to create those situations. But the hope part is what we want to talk about more today, because it's about finding the opportunity in adversity, because inside of every adverse situation, there are opportunities, and sometimes we have to dig deep to find them. I want to go back to a day of July 30th, 2008. It's 13 years ago, and I was sitting in this little rundown apartment where I lived in Dallas, Texas. And that day, I was sitting on the couch with my drug dealer, this guy named Tex. And I'm telling Tex, as we're sitting on the couch smoking methamphetamines, we're doing drugs, and I'm sitting there telling Tex, I think the end is near. I think the cops are about to come get me. 10 days before that, the guy that I had been doing all my crimes with in Dallas had been picked up by the Dallas police. And so I knew it was a matter of time before they got to me. And just as I passed this glass pipe back over to Tex, my window blew out on the right side. And tumbling across the floor in my living room was a little canister, and it was smoking on one end. And I've seen enough movies like this on American TV to know that I'm in real trouble now. And I tried to get out of the living room, but it was too late because the flashbang grenade went off right in my face. Boom. And it was a bright white light, a loud noise, and it blew me back on the couch. And when I could see and hear again, there was a police officer standing in my face. He has his boot on my chest, and the barrel of a machine gun is in my eye, and he's screaming, "Don't move, don't move." And I remember I told the guy, don't worry. And so one of the police officers yelled out, "We got him. We got the Uptown Burglar." The Uptown Burglar, Shrikant, is the name they called me when I was in my crime spree, when I was going around with a crew of other men and women breaking into people's houses to feed our drug habits. We were meth addicts breaking into people's homes. And so that name, the Uptown Burglar, is something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. That's the consequences of my decisions. But it doesn't define me. And I tell people all the time that your past, your mistakes don't define you. That our past is our lesson. Our present today is a gift, not a gift for what we can do for ourselves, but a gift for what we can do for other people. and the future is your motivation. So my story, I came from a great family here in Texas. My parents to this day are still married. They've been married for 53 years. I was a great athlete. I had a lot of opportunities in sports. I got a scholarship to university to play a sport, to play football. And in America, American football is a very big thing. I got hurt in the middle of my career in college at university. And then I got into more serious drugs, but I was still functioning. I went off to work in Washington, D.C. in the United States Congress. I worked for a man running for president of the United States back in 2004. And when he dropped out of the race for president of the United States, I moved back to Dallas, Texas, to train to be a stockbroker, to work in trading of stocks and commodities and bonds. And it was at that job that I was introduced to methamphetamine for the first time. And once I was introduced to that drug, Srikanth, I couldn't give everything away fast enough for that drug. I was a slave to the drug. And that's what we become as addicts when we get into our addictive behavior. And I went from working at the highest levels of society to living on the lowest levels of society. I was homeless. I was sleeping, in abandoned buildings, living out of people's cars, living in other drug dens with other drug addicts, because that's what I am, as a drug addict. And that's when I started committing crimes to pay for my drugs. I would break into people's cars. I would break into people's storage units. And eventually I broke into people's homes. And this crime in America is called a burglary. And a burglary is when you break into someone's home. And I learned that I didn't just steal property from my victims. I stole my victims' sense of security. And I don't know if they ever get that back. So I always want to make it a point to talk about my victims because they're the ones that sacrificed the most for the story today. So on July 30th, 2008, after 3 years of committing property crimes against the people of Dallas, Texas, the Dallas Police Department put an end to the Uptown burglaries the day they arrested me. And so they threw me in jail. And jail was tough. It was hard. It was very much an unknown environment for me. I had never been in this kind of environment before. I grew up in a middle-class background. So I never really knew anybody that had been to jail, that had been to prison. And I remember waiting for my day in court because I was going to go to trial for my crimes. And I remember thinking to myself that because I've never been in trouble before, I'll probably be able to get out of here with a very, very light sentence. And before you know it, I'll be back doing drugs again, because that was the one thought mind process. I just wanted to get out and get high again. But about a year after my arrest, it was May 18th, 2009, almost 12 years ago to the day of this recording, I'm standing in front of a courtroom in Dallas, Texas. And this jury of my peers, we have a jury system here in America with 12 men and women that make a judgment on you for your crimes. And the jury was there for a whole week for my trial. And after a whole week of listening to overwhelming evidence of my guilt, the jury went to think about my punishment for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Srikanth, is not a long time to think about a punishment after 1 week. It means the jury was very decided on how much they hated me. And when I came back into that courtroom, the judge said, Damon Joseph West, you are hereby sentenced to 65 years in a Texas prison. 65 years is a life sentence, Srikanth. So the jury gave me life in prison in 2009 for my crimes, for the things I did. Obviously, I didn't do life in prison because you're talking to me today and I'm not coming to you from a prison cell in America. I did 7 years and 3 months in a maximum security penitentiary, a maximum security prison. And at the end of 7 years and 3 months, the prison system came to visit me, the parole board. And parole is a device we have in America where they can let you out of prison to go back onto the street and you still serve your sentence, but you don't do it behind bars. And so I'm up for parole for the first time. And the lady that's interviewing me, she's got my file in front of her that has all the stuff I've ever done. And she looks at my file for a few seconds and she closes it up and she says, Mr. West, I came to ask you a question today. And the answer to that question is not in that file. She said, you had everything going for you in life, every advantage, every privilege, every opportunity, but you blew all of that. You became a drug addict, you became a thief, a criminal, and a liar, and a jury gave you life in prison for the things you did. She said, but instead of letting that life sentence define you, she said, you came to this prison and you changed yourself inside this prison. She said, but more importantly, you changed the entire prison around you. She said, so I have one question for you today, Mr. West. If you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, I want you to tell me what that is in just one word, go. And Srikanth, I'm a coffee bean. That's the easiest question in the world for a coffee bean to answer. And I fired her answer back at her real quick. And I said, ma'am, useful. I just want to be useful. And I can be useful inside this prison, as you have already seen, or it can be useful out in the world again, finding coffee beans. And she said, okay, that's a good answer. We're going to let you go. And so I walked out of prison on November 16th, 2015, with a second chance in life and a mission to find coffee beans everywhere I can. And you're probably wondering, your listeners are probably wondering, why does he keep talking about coffee, right? Because what does a coffee bean have to do with all of this? And the answer is that, and when I was in jail is different than prison in America. Jail means it's before you go to prison. It's where they hold you in a place before you go to an American prison. And so when I was in jail, waiting to go to prison, there was another inmate in there. And he was an older black man. And he said, he was trying to tell me what prison was going to be like when I got there, because he had been to prison several times. And so he said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put in this pot of boiling water will be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And he said, let's put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and finally a coffee bean. So he walks me through it, Srikanth. He says, if I put a carrot into the same pot of boiling water that we call prison, he said, what will happen to the carrot? And I answered him, I said, the carrot will turn soft. And he said, that is correct. The carrot goes into the water very hard and firm, but the water, the prison, turns the hard and firm carrot soft, mushy, and weak. He said, you do not want to be the carrot inside the water. He said, what happens to the egg in that pot of boiling water that we call prison? And I responded, the egg will turn hard, like a hard-boiled egg. And he said, that is correct. He said, the egg has a shell that protects him physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, his heart now becomes hardened. He said, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, then you've become part of the institution of prison. He said, you do not want to be the egg inside the prison. They become hard and mad and mean. Then he asked me, Srikanth, he said, tell me what happens to the coffee bean in that pot of boiling water we call prison. And Srikanth, I didn't know what happened to a coffee bean. I had no clue what the answer was to the question. And that's when he shared with me one of the most important lessons I've ever learned in life. What he told me, he said, if I put a coffee bean into that same pot of boiling water that we call prison, he said, now you will have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, the smallest of the 3 things, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot, because the power was inside the coffee bean. He said, just like the power is inside of you. He said everything else was changed by the water. The carrot was changed by the water. The egg was changed by the water. He said, but the coffee bean was the only thing that could actually change the water. And he said, everybody in life, we put out energy, negative or positive. He said, whatever kind of energy we put out, we attract back. It's called the law of attraction. And it works. He said, so if you want to walk around prison with a frown on your face and you want to look like you're tough because of all the other tough guys around you, he said, what you're going to actually do with your negative energy, your negative disposition, you're going to attract the most negative people to you, the most dangerous felons into your life. He said, but if you walk around that prison with a smile on your face and you let those guys know they're not getting to you, no matter what they do, they cannot penetrate Damon West. He said, then you will turn your pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And he said, the best part about this is the other coffee beans that are in that prison with you, they will find you because of your energy. He said your energy is so important in every environment you go into. And Srikant, the last thing he told me was to go out there and go be a coffee bean. And so I went to prison with these 4 words on my mind: be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean. And what this meant, Srikant, is that the power is inside of me. And if the power was inside of me, it's not in the hands of the institution of prison or the hands of the guards that would be over me, or even in the hands of the other inmates that will be around me living in prison, not unless I give them that power. That power is inside of me. And if the power is inside me, it means no matter what environment I'm dropped off in, no matter what prison I find myself in, no matter what adversity I will face in life, that I can not just only survive, but I can thrive. And so I got my chance to find out, Srikant, that prison was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life, the most terrifying, most dangerous thing I've ever been through. It was very violent. The first 2 months of prison were the hardest thing I've ever been through on several levels. Physically, it was the hardest. Spiritually, it was the hardest. And mentally, it was the hardest. But after all the violence of the first 2 months was over and I established myself, I had a chance to figure out how to become a coffee bean inside the pot of boiling water that is prison. And I learned that there were several things that we can do in our lives every day to become a coffee bean. And one of the first thing that I learned was that what the guy told me about was that energy. Your energy is powerful. And if you will purposely make yourself smile in every room you walk into, your smile has a lot of power. Your smile changes the energy in the room, and people see you smile and they smile back. And that's what we need, is that positive energy that feeds off of each other. So that was like the first rule of being a coffee bean. The second rule of being a coffee bean was getting up every day and working out on myself in 3 different areas every day: spiritually, mentally, and physically. And spiritually, I tell people all the time, you have to tap into that spiritual world. You're connected to it. Everybody's connected to it. We have to tap into that every single day. And mentally, I tell people that, mentally, your mental workout every day is every book you read. It's every video you watch. It's every website you go to, the podcast that you listen to. It's your social media feeds. Who do you follow? What do you post? And what are you reading? When I was in prison, Srikant, I had so much time on my hands. I wanted to learn about everything. And so I read everything I could: fiction, nonfiction, biographies, histories. I read about all the world religions. I've read the Bible. I've read the Quran. I've read the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita. I've read them all when I was in prison because I wanted to learn about different cultures and I couldn't leave my one place. But our mental workout is so important because I tell people all the time that you are what you eat. And that's not just about food. That's about everything you consume in your brain. And then your physical workout is important too. We've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to get enough rest. We've got to eat the right foods. We've got to take care of our physical health. We get one body in this life. When I was in prison, I got a chance to go into the chapel and they would bring different religious groups, different spiritual groups in there. I got into yoga when I was in prison because they had different guys that were in there that would bring in the yoga classes with the other inmates. So every day I would take care of myself physically, mentally, and spiritually. The third rule about being a coffee bean was servant leadership. It's servant leadership is helping other people achieve their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station in life. Because when we're helping other people, that's when we are at our best. And so there's a lot of different ways that I learned in there that, we can be a coffee bean in any environment we're in. And I think that my life is an example of that because I've proven on the outside exactly the way I lived on the inside of prison. I live today the same way I lived inside of a maximum security prison because the rules apply all the time. And Srikant, there's a lot of different ways to go to prison. Physical prison is just one prison. I tell people this all the time, and it's almost a warning that I meet more people out here in the free world that are locked up than I ever did when I was in prison, because more people are in prison by their thoughts and by their things than by steel bars and barbed wire and concrete. We become prisoners in our minds a lot faster than we become physical prisoners in life. Right now in your country, you're dealing with serious pandemic right now. You're dealing with
That's right.
You're dealing with the surge of coronavirus. There's a lot of fears going on right now. And there can be a natural tendency to become a prisoner in your mind because the fears consume you. And some fears are real. I mean, the fears you're going with are real. We went through the surge last year, but some of these fears can be in your head and they can be overwhelming and they can paralyze you.
So, Damon, that was a wonderful start act, a lot of insights, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that personal story of yours. There are a couple of things that came out to my mind as you were stating this. One was definitely, how did you find hope in a hopeless situation? What made you to kind of look at the situation that you are in and still say that, okay, there is hope out of this?
Man, that's a great question, Srikanth. And I tell people all the time that I don't know what the right religion, the right spiritual path is for everybody. Everybody has to choose their own spiritual path. And that's the wonderful thing about it. You get to pick your own spiritual path in life. But I do tell people all the time, find a path, because it's a very big universe out there and we're all connected in some way. And once you find that path, that's where you're going to also find the hope, because life is difficult. And I found in my life, it's just, I'll use I statements. I can't do this on my own. I have found that I need the help spiritually of a higher power. And if I can tap into that higher power, and the good thing is you get to choose your own higher power in life. But if I tap into my higher power, then I find the hope there. There's 4 things that we control in life, Srikanth. We control what we think, what we say, what we feel, and what we do. That's it. What we think, what we say, what we feel, and what we do. If you would think about it like this, a diagram of this would be easier. Say there's a big giant line, and this line extends from one horizon of the universe to the next horizon of the universe. It's a giant line. We'll call that line the line of the higher power, whatever it is you believe in out there. And on that line are all the things that you do not control, because if there's only 4 things we control, then that means there's a lot of other stuff going on around us. So we have to trust that the higher power takes care of everything on that line, that plane, from one horizon universe to the next. Now, if the higher power has that big line, then you have a line too. But yours is more like about an inch, maybe a couple of centimeters of your line. Your line is a few centimeters wide. And on your little centimeter line, let's call that humility. Because humility is being right-sized. And when we are right-sized, then we can have control of our 4 things in life, and we can become useful to other people. And that's where we find the hope, because now we are in control of those 4 things, and we allow the rest of the world to happen around us. And we understand that the 4 things we control, the 4 things that we really have control over, are between our ears, Srikanth. We control what's going on inside of our minds. That means that what's going on in the world around you right now, the pandemic that's going on in India and the world around you, you don't control that. You can't control that. You don't control your government's response to it, but you control how you respond to it. And if you always keep control of the way you respond to every situation, then you will find yourself having a lot less of what I call a seemingly hopeless world. And the reason why I want to put the word seemingly, because seemingly means that it just seems that way. It's not really that way. And when we find ourselves in a hopeless situation, a lot of times there is hope. Srikanth, I've found that in adversity, there's 2 things I've learned about facing adversity in my life. I statements. I'll use I statements. I have found that the situation is never as bad as I think it's going to be, because my mind can play tricks on me, and that I'm always capable of way more than I think I am. I undersell my ability to get through a difficult situation all the time. And finally, in the hope question is this: when we deal with difficult situations, because you're in a difficult situation now where you are in your country, you're in the pot of boiling water right now. Let's say that. In that pot of boiling water, we have to have perspective. And this situation right here is going to give some people perspective on what a bad day looks like. But some people may have perspective on what a bad day looks like, and it's worse than what you're going through right now. In my life, I have a perspective on what a really bad day can look like. And every day that I wake up, and I don't wake up inside of a prison cell in the state of Texas, then I'm having a good day. Because if I'm free physically, spiritually, mentally, then I have an opportunity to make the most out of a bad situation, whatever that situation is, because I know the situation could always be worse than what it is. So perspective is very healthy.
Nice. So developing those perspectives will definitely get you out of those from a hopeless situation to a hopeful situation.
Absolutely.
And you did mention about the new charge that you have taken is to be a coffee bean, spread the message of coffee bean to the world out there. And you have been doing a lot of work with the sports team, with the US Army, with the corporates. Can you share one or two experiences of yours where you have seen servant leadership at the fore?
Yeah. So servant leadership is about helping other people achieve their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station of life. And what I mean by servant leadership is when we look for other people to help and we don't look for anything in return, because we understand that we have people that help us in our lives. People have helped every one of us get to where we are in life. No one is that good that they just showed up here one day. So servant leadership is something that I've seen multiple different groups, teams, and organizations. The U.S. Army believes in servant leadership. And what they want to do is they want to make sure that their soldiers have the best opportunities in life. So they bring people like me in to train these soldiers. And, in the corporate world, servant leadership is about helping to raise their employees up to a better situation in life. They find ways, some of the corporations I've spoken to, they see their employees going through something. There's a company I've worked with, a restaurant chain here in Texas called Jason's Deli. And they have a lot of restaurants down here on the coast. And when a hurricane came through, Hurricane Harvey back in 2017, a lot of the employees lost their homes due to the hurricane. And so the restaurant, Jason's Deli, stepped in and helped these employees find new homes. And the ones that were the homes that could be repaired, they helped pay for the repairs on the homes. And they never took them off their wages and salaries, even when they couldn't be at work because they were dealing with their own devastation in their lives. Can you imagine, Srikant, how much of a relief that was? I mean, this is one of those seemingly hopeless situations. Your home has been destroyed by a natural disaster, and you have to take care of that. You can't be at your job. You can't be in two places at one time. But the company said, go take care of your life, fix your home. And while you're doing that, you keep getting your salary and your wages, even when you're not at work, because we want to help you out. So one of the greatest lessons I've ever seen in servant leadership was what they did with that company. I mean, they saved people's lives, physically saved people's lives.
Wonderful. That's a great story on servant leadership in action. So Damon, we have been talking about your past experience, how you turned out to be a coffee bean, and your work post on with corporate America and the US Army. And along the way, you have also been doing something called as a Coffee Bean Foundation. Tell us a bit about what is that and what is the motto of Coffee Bean Foundation.
So the Be a Coffee Bean Foundation, we have a website, beacoffeebeanfoundation.org. It's a long website. But what we do with our foundation, we have two initiatives. And one of them, and it's all rooted inside the world of criminal justice, because my life is obviously involved with criminal justice. Today, since I've been out of prison, I went back to school. I went back to university. I got a master's degree, and I became a professor. And I teach at the University of Houston in America. I teach a class called Prisons in America, which is unique, Srikant, because I was in a prison in America 5 years ago serving a life sentence. But so a lot of my life has to deal with the prison system and criminal justice system in America. So the foundation my wife and I started, we have two different initiatives that we deal with. One of them is connecting children whose parents are incarcerated in American prisons. We connect these children with opportunities to do extracurricular activities, meaning like if a little girl or boy if the girl wants to take dance, or she wants to play a sport, if the boy wants to take, a sport, or the boy or girl wants to take music lessons, whatever it is, the activity the child wants to do, but cannot do because the parent is in prison, we help that child out and pay for those activities for that child. Because one, we want the children of incarcerated parents to stay involved in life, because we know that the children of incarcerated parents are more likely to one day become incarcerated because they had a parent that was in prison. But we also want to strengthen the connection between the parent that is in prison and the child that is out there struggling in life. We want to make that bond stronger. So we allow the parent that's in prison to nominate their child for a scholarship, and we pay for the scholarship for the extracurricular activity the child wants to take. So that's one of the things we do. The other thing we do is we have found that in the American prison system, the highest rate of incarceration, the most likely person you're going to find in an American prison is a Black man. Black men make up half of the prison population in America. And it's alarming. There's so many Black men locked up. And we looked at the way America looks. And so we have a big number of Black men that are in prison in America. And Black men are 5 times more likely to go to prison than a white man, like me, for example. But we also looked at the American educational system. And it shows that less than 2% of our population of teachers in America are Black men. And so I lived inside of a prison. I know that there are some redeemable good men of all colors inside of prison. So what we have done in our foundation is we have scholarships for these Black men that are incarcerated that have not a serious crime. They don't have a lot of time on their sentence. They're not sentenced to a long time. And they have the aptitude, the ability to test into an American university. And what we've done is we've taken these men. The first group is going to be 5 of these men that fit this criteria, these Black men, and we moved them to one prison and had a university move into the prison too. And these men are going to earn elementary education degrees inside of a prison. And when they get their elementary education degree and they become certified public school teachers from inside of prison, then they are going to be released from prison and placed inside of the toughest elementary schools in America. The elementary schools where the population looks like them, where places where a lot of the population would say that's where your future prison population is going to come from. Because we want to take these men and make them the coffee beans in the pot of boiling water that is these kids' lives, that says these kids are 5 times more likely to come to prison. Now we want to take a man from within the prison system and put him into an elementary school and let him be the positive male role model that so many of these kids are lacking, because so many of those males are in prison. So these men become the coffee beans, and that's what we call our Mr. Coffee Bean initiative. So we're excited about it.
Oh, congratulations. That's a terrific initiative to change things at the grassroots level.
Absolutely. We're excited about Srikanth.
So Damon, I will move over to a bunch of rapid fire questions, putting Damon into the hot water.
Okay, sounds good.
So Damon, you are a motivational speaker. Where do you get your motivation from?
Well, it's kind of what we talked about perspective earlier. I know what a bad day looks like. And every day that I wake up, and I don't wake up inside of a prison, I think I've got a pretty good day on my hands. And it was tough. During the pandemic last year, I was challenged. To find, how do I find something positive in this? Everybody's locked into their homes. But I found that the more that I pour myself into other people, the more that I pour myself into other people's problems and help other people out, the better of a person that I am. I heard one time, Srikant, somebody told me, if we could all throw our problems onto a pile, and then we could go to that pile and we could grab someone else's problem in life and make that our problem, that chances are really good that we would go back and pick up our own problems. When you see what everybody else is carrying around in life, we'd probably go pick up our own problems. Everybody, Srikant, is going through something. And so it's incumbent upon us to be kind and be aware and be available to other people. And so that's how I live my life. I find ways to help other people out. When I'm having a difficult day, I pour myself into others, and that takes me outside of self. When I'm outside of self, I'm always useful.
Great. Practices that you follow to stay positive and energetic.
When I get up in the morning, I say a prayer, one prayer. This is the only thing I pray for. And whatever religion you are, whatever you believe in, you can plug this in to your faith too. So, and I'm a Christian, but that doesn't matter. Anybody can be whatever they want. I ask my God in the morning when I wake up, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize that when I see it. And that's it. That's the only prayer that I have, because I know that if I take care of what I'm needed to do in my faith, I believe that if I take care of what my God tells me that he needs for me to do, then my God will take care of my needs too. Not my wants, but my needs. And this is the whole thing about we control what we think, what we say, what we feel, and what we do. So I go and I work. I look for ways to serve other people. But at the end of the day, and these are things I picked up, Srikant, by the way, this wasn't just stuff that reading a Bible could give me. This was stuff from reading all these other books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Torah. I'm telling you, I picked up stuff from every religion and I applied it. At the end of the day, I'm asking my God, I'm saying, hey, how was I today? Was I a good person? What did I do to put back into the stream of life? Do I owe someone an apology? Because I need to own my behaviors. And if I owe someone an apology, I need to make an amends. That person deserves an amends for my behavior. But one of the main reasons why I have this conversation at the end of the night is that I have to ask my God, do I owe somebody forgiveness? Do I need to forgive someone that has done something to me? Because this whole concept about forgiveness, human beings, we all want to be loved and belonged. So if we want to belong and be loved, we have to say that we want to all be forgiven for the things we do. Every time we wrong somebody or do something wrong, we want society. We want people to say, hey, it's okay. But you have to be willing to give that to others too. 100% of the time, especially the people that do not ask for forgiveness for the things they've done wrong to you. Because what happens, Srikant, if we carry this around, the opposite of forgiveness is a resentment. And a resentment that's like hate that you carry around inside of you. When you resent someone, a person, a place, a thing, or institution, you carry a hate around inside of you. And that hate corrodes you from the inside out, because hate corrodes the container it's contained in. So when we let go of that, when we get rid of that hate, that poison that's inside of us by forgiving other people, then we can become the best versions of ourselves. But if I don't do this at night, Srikant, if I don't say, hey, God, whatever God you believe in, if I don't say, hey, God, I need to let go of this right now. If I don't do that at night, then guess what I do? I take yesterday's garbage into tomorrow. One of the most important roles in all of society, in every society, is a sanitation worker. A sanitation worker is someone you would refer to as the person that collects the garbage, right? The garbage person that drives around in the truck and picks up the trash in front of your house. If these sanitation workers decided one day to stop doing their jobs, then society would break down, because no one wants to live in a society where garbage and trash is all over the streets, and people's homes are blocked in by the bags of garbage and trash that pile up, right? No one wants to live in a society like that. In your own life, your own personal spiritual life, you are your own sanitation worker. You have to take out your own emotional, spiritual, and mental garbage all the time. And the only way to do that is to work through a personal inventory and connect to a higher power and clean your side of the street. So the best practice I can tell everybody is keep your side of the street clean in life.
Wonderful message. In a way, you answered my next question, but I will still go ahead and ask my next question, which is,
okay,
does your past experience terrify you?
You know, my past experience is something that I draw from, and it's something I think I can use to help other people with. When I tell people all the time, your past doesn't define you, and I use the visual of a vehicle. When you're driving in a vehicle, the windshield that you look out in front of is huge, right? It's big. You need more room to see. That little mirror up there, the rear view mirror that you look behind you, is really small. And there's a reason why it's set up like that, because our windshields are big because we see the future, what's going on in front of us. We need more space to see forward than we need to see backwards. So don't spend so much time looking at the past that you've done and the mistakes that you've made. You know what? You can't change the past. You know, the past is already done. But today, the present is in front of you. And then what are you going to do today to make your life better and make the lives better of other people and motivate yourself with that? That's your future. The future is your motivation. So, you know, my past doesn't terrify me. My past shows me that if I get outside of that spiritual plane, then I will become a person that is not so admirable, a person that is capable of doing bad things. My addiction to drugs and alcohol is only contained by a program of recovery. And I belong to a 12-step program of recovery. And Shrikant, this is something I'm never going to graduate from. I never get a diploma and say I graduated from my 12-step program. I go to meetings every week. You know, I work my steps. I work my program of recovery. As long as I stay in my program of recovery, then I'm going to be a good person.
Wonderful. Damon, in closing, what's your Inspire Someone Today message for all my listeners?
Oh, man, I got this one for you. So my Inspire Someone Today message for all your listeners. First of all, I want to thank you again for this opportunity to come to your country today because I've never been there. And frankly, traveling for a guy like me that's a felon is difficult. Some countries won't allow felons into their country. I read a good book, too, when I was in prison about this guy that did time in a bunch of different Indian prisons. And the book was called Shantaram. I don't know if you've ever read the book Shantaram, but Shantaram was fascinating. I mean, he took you all through India, through the Indian prison system. But my message to inspire is this: life is a difficult place. It is a pot of boiling water, and it can be a stressful, harsh, dangerous place even. Right now, you're in a pot of boiling water in India. But you have three choices of how you will respond to your pot of boiling water called life. You can choose to be like the carrot that turns soft and sad and weak. And it's okay to be the carrot sometimes. We're going to have carrot days. That's natural human emotion. Then you can choose to be like the egg that turns hard and mad and angry and mean with the events of life going on around you. And you know what? You're going to have egg days too. That happens. We spend time being the carrot and the egg. But you do have a choice. You do have a third option, because having a bad day is a choice, Shrikant. You know, you choose what kind of day you have, because you have a power inside of you, that power to be that coffee bean. You also have this power inside of you that no matter what time of the day, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night, it doesn't matter what time of the day, you can stop your bad day and say, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, and you tell life, hey, life, I don't have to be the carrot, and I don't have to be the egg. And then you choose to be like the coffee bean and jump into that pot of boiling water called life, and you tell life, you know what, turn it up. I've got this, because I am a coffee bean. And the longer the coffee bean sits in the pot of boiling water called life, the stronger your pot of coffee is going to be. So my call to action, my advice to everybody listening to our podcast today is this. You go out there in your pot of boiling water called life, and you go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean. That's my advice.
On that note, be a coffee bean. Damon, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your life experience with my listeners. Appreciate it.
Shrikant, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what you listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Shrikant, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.